Hi, and welcome to episode 46 of CultureWatch Radio. I'm Andrew Smith, and with me is Mr. CultureWatch, Bill Muhlenberg. Bill, Australians are great lovers of the outdoors, and this includes those city folk. Now, the increasingly popular activity for friends and families is to go out for a street march, and this isn't the rent-a-crowd.
Yes, Andrew, you got that right. I was there on Saturday. This is my first of the recent marches, and there's been quite a few, both in Melbourne and all around the country. And people, ordinary people, mums and dads, grandpas, grandmas, families going out to stand up for freedom, to stand against government overreach and tyranny, stand against the two-tiered society with medical mandates, just, well, wanting to get our lives back, really. It's not so much a revolution, but a restoration. We want to go back to how freedom and democracy are supposed to be, not getting permissions from the state to do this or that, to leave your home, to who can go into a store, who can get onto a tram. This is stuff that ordinary Australians are saying, wait a minute, this is not the Australia I knew, and couple that with huge marches as well all over the world, Rome, Paris, New York, all over the place, Vienna, we're seeing the same thing. People have, well, they're had enough. They're saying, I want my freedom back. Give me freedom now. So, and it's not, as you say, the old rent-a-crowd. We even have, old Army veterans, diggers and the like, coming and sharing their stories at these marches.
Yeah, in fact, John Murphy was at the Melbourne March. This is what he had to say.
First of all, I want to say thank you to all for coming here and standing up for Australia today. I hope that I'm representing all of our past diggers, and I'll just say that Australia has been willing to send troops to all parts of the world to help people become free wherever they might have been under oppression over the last 100 years or more. And to now be fighting oppression here in our own country, it's saddening. But I thank you very much. And I want to call on all former servicemen, former policemen who've sworn an oath to Australia to stand up against those that are oppressing us again today. Now, thanks again, and fight for our freedom.
Bill, the crowd were with him. And it's no wonder. I mean, it's hand in hand with the younger generation coming through and their increased level of support for Anzac Day remembrance and all that stuff that the older folk thought would die out.
Yeah, well, as I say, I was there, and boy, a lot of young people, certainly older, middle-aged as well, but plenty of young people. And as you could probably hear by the crowd, massive, massive crowd. The numbers have been, it's hard to always guess, but I think those who are saying 250,000 at the Melbourne rally alone would be pretty much in the ballpark, and we could probably say at least 500,000 throughout Australia on that past Saturday, with, of course, more marches coming next Saturday, the one after. These marches are getting bigger, they're getting better, and people are really showing us people power in action. But as I've also said, it's a neat combination, people power and God power. I was amazed at how many Christians I saw everywhere, people holding signs with Bible verses and scriptural references, people praying, people worshiping, people singing. I thought, boy, this is either the biggest church service I've been in, or maybe it kind of took me back to the Woodstock days, right? People crying for freedom and standing against the state and tyranny. In fact, I think I might have even smelled a few bits of marijuana as I walked by. So it certainly wasn't just conservatives. It was, there were hippie types there. There were young and old, left and right, black and white. It really was a mixed crowd. Certainly not the stereotypes you're getting from the media.
Oh, the good old days. Hey, Bill?
Yeah, well, it took me back.
And for those that don't know, you really were a hippie.
Yeah. Well, look, 50 years ago, I was part of the Woodstock generation, the hippie scene. And in fact, I was telling people on Saturday, this is really bringing back some memories here. I mean, 50 years ago, I was marching in the streets. We had colorful people and colorful costumes with placards, chanting, calling for freedom, demanding the state get out of our lives. And boy, we seem to have gone full circle, doing it again today after a half century. In fact, as I told some others, one of the songs that was memorable at Woodstock was Freedom by Richie Havens, and as I told them, he actually made it up on the spot. It was an impromptu song he performed, and the same here on Saturday, impromptu songs and chants about freedom. So I'm really kind of getting these deja vu type situations here. Wow, I'm going back to my Woodstock youth here, but no, encouraging to see people standing for freedom.
Yeah, and these crowds, I mean, insanely huge. Photos of the crowds just rival anything else, certainly that Melbourne has ever seen. And for the media, they can't ignore it. They can't say, oh, it's just a fringe thing. But they are casting aspersions of there must be an extremist far-right element somewhere in these crowds. But obviously a crowd can contain anyone, even journalists.
Well, that's right. Doesn't matter what the march is from the left or the right. There'll always be a handful who want to give it a bad name, try to hijack it. But you're right about the media and politicians. They try to say we're all a bunch of, neo-Nazis, white supremacists. In fact, the 250,000 grannies and children and families who marched on Saturday, our Premier, Dan Andrews, said they were all a bunch of extremist thugs. So there you go. Thanks, Dan, for attacking ordinary Victorians. We'll hopefully remember that come the next election. But sure, you'll get a handful, those who may want to cause trouble, but I couldn't see anybody. There was no violence, no problems, no anything, both in Melbourne and in other capital cities last Saturday. These were the biggest and the most peaceful protests. In fact, they were said to be the biggest protests in Australian history. So may they long continue.
The media are telling their own story when it comes to these events. How does this compare to back in the days of Woodstock?
Well, again, from a spiritual point of view, I wasn't a Christian back in my wild youth when I was marching and we're going to these rock concerts and all the rest, but similar themes, largely peaceful crowds, wanting to just, back then, peace, love, rock and roll, that was the main theme, but again, freedom, a reaction to the state and to authoritarianism. That was a big part of that. As I say, today, you got plenty of obviously secular marchers angry with the lockdowns, with the two-tiered society, with the new segregation that's happening, with health mandates, new apartheid. But as I say, a lot of Christians now coming, realizing that it's got to be a spiritual event as well. We have to raise our voices. We have to let politicians and the media hear our side of the story, but we also need to pray as well. So there's similarities with my youth as a hippie and the protest marches, but there's some differences as well. But I suppose in the sense that they're both calling for, governments to be responsible, give us our freedoms back. A lot of interesting similarities.
But back then, did the media tell the truth?
Well, sure. Back then, I mean, it's funny the way tables have turned. Back then, I was in the fringe. I was in the minority as a hippie. The media and everybody else was really conservative. They tended to, really slam us and misreport us and, talk about the small numbers at the marches. Now we've got a real reversal of fortune. Now we've got the left basically in charge of the media, politics, you name it. The secular left reigns. And those of us calling for freedom, whether Christian or not, we're the new counterculture. We're the new members of the fringes of society trying to get a hearing. So we got the same thing, the mainstream media today trying to put down us, to say we didn't have many numbers there. 10,000 might have showed up at Melbourne when easily 250,000. So some things never change, but we just simply have reversed some of the characters, it seems.
Like Larry Norman says, nothing changes, everything remains the same.
That's it.
Our once famously egalitarian Australian identity where everyone is equal, that's now been split more ways than a really badly cut pizza. Is your injection status just a further splitting, or is this getting into a right, proper segregation?
Well, it certainly is segregation, and in a sense, no segregation is right and proper. Certainly not keeping people from their livelihoods, from getting a job, from travel, from going to shops, from getting the education, all because of their medical status. That is a wrong kind of segregation. That is medical apartheid. And by the way, we fought this kind of stuff 75 years ago. We even had trials in Nuremberg and a Nuremberg Code, which spoke about never again will we coerce people to unethical medicine, force them against their wills to be, whether medical experiments or to have medical procedures done on them against their will. I thought all that was decided 75 years ago, but now we're reliving the very same thing. The government can tell you what must be injected into your body. If they get to that point, well, they can do anything. They can coerce you into any kind of, maybe sterilization or euthanasia, you name it. So this is a scary development indeed. We haven't learned the lessons of history, and we do indeed have a new segregation, a new medical apartheid, and that's why millions of people are now marching against this coercion by the state.
And you could imagine sterilisation because they could make the case that the planet is in danger, there's too many humans, we need to reduce the numbers.
Well, absolutely. I mean, both COVID and the so-called climate crisis, the activists are saying the same thing. We've got too many people. We got to radically narrow down the population, save the planet. Many of the same people in the Great Reset and so on, Bill Gates, who are supposedly fighting the virus, are also fighting climate change. And they're all saying, yep, we're overpopulated. So, yeah, for the good of society, let's have mandatory sterilizations. It's happened before, and it can happen again.
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Always on the pulse, there's more at the Culture Watch website. And we'll see you again next week with another episode of CultureWatch Radio. Subscribe where you listen at SoundCloud, YouTube and Rumble so you don't miss a thing.